16-year-old Chanel Petro-Nixon was born on August 4th, 1989, in Brooklyn, New York. She lived with her parents, Lucida Nixon and Anthony Garvin, along with her two brothers, Marcus and Giovanni. She was an active and consistent member of the Mount of Olives Seventh-day Adventist Church and was considered devout by her family. She attended Boys and Girls High School as an 11th grader and was known as a straight-A student who spent her after-school hours in the library. According to her family, she had aspirations of becoming a nurse and loved helping people. On a sunny Father's Day afternoon, Chanel left her home to meet with a friend at a nearby Applebee's restaurant, while other sources say she went to put in a job application. Chanel kissed her mother goodbye before heading out the door. However, Chanel would never return. When her mother noticed she did not return the following morning, she reported her missing to the police. Only 4 days later, a trash collector came to remove street trash when they noticed that one bag was particularly way too heavy. A resident on the street was coming to bring her trash out to them when she noticed they were about to leave a garbage bag on the street. She flagged them and they told her the bag was too heavy and she would need to break it up. Upon opening the bag, she made a horrific discovery: a dead woman's body partly clothed. The body was later identified as Chanel Petro-Nixon. It was determined that she had been strangled to death with hits to her head and face. Though the detectives believe she was alive 24 hours before her body was found. Her mother said, "It hurts that wherever she was for those 4 days, she must have been scared, but I hope she was able to call on God." Because Chanel's body showed no signs of sexual assault or major struggle, the police struggled with moving the case forward. As weeks went by, posters were plastered all over the windows in the Brooklyn area. Shopkeepers also put up Chanel's photo in hopes that someone would say something. The reward for any information leading to an arrest went from $12,000 to $22,000 and ultimately $38,000. The NYPD interviewed all of her friends and collected hundreds of tips without any promising leads. Investigators even came to the family's apartment and took her computer, hoping to find clues on the hard drive or on her MySpace page, but to no avail. Her parents also made pleas to the public requesting help to find her killer. Her mother, Lucida, began taking time off and tending to the rest of the family, especially the youngest son, Marcus, who attended therapy. Her death was especially hard for her father, as she was their only daughter, and it took place on Father's Day. Chanel's father, Anthony, stated, "I don't trust anybody. That person shaking your hand, smiling in your face, could be the one who did this." Chanel was buried at Rosedale and Rose Hill Cemetery in Linden, New Jersey. There was one person of interest that caught the attention of the detectives, which was her friend she was supposed to meet at the Applebee's, 19-year-old Veron Primus. The two were former classmates who went to the same church. One of Chanel's friends, Kanika, called Veron when she went missing about Chanel, and he shared that they were supposed to meet at the Applebee's, but she never showed up. He even rang her phone without any success. With minimal physical evidence and none connecting Veron to the case, the investigation eventually went cold. After Chanel's murder, Veron's face started to become familiar to the NYPD. In 2012, 2 women accused him of and violating a protection order with a third woman. Veron was acquitted of assault charges, but convicted on a lesser charge of criminal contempt and sentenced to 2 to 4 years in prison. Upon making parole in 2015, he was released to immigration authorities and deported to his home country of St. Vincent. While in St. Vincent, he reconnected with an old grade school friend of his, 24-year-old Moana Hadaway. Within 3 months, the two began a relationship. At first, he was generous and always there for her. But as time passed, he became increasingly violent, threatening her in arguments and attempting to stab her on 4 different occasions. She eventually broke things off with him, filed a police report, and he finally left her alone until New Year's Day in 2016. On this night, Veron contacted Moana and asked her to collect something that he had for her, but she had no idea that he was luring her into a kidnapping. Once she arrived, he swiftly locked her in the basement and held her captive for 3.5 months. She was not allowed to have clothes on and was promised death if she ever tried to escape. While captive, Veron sent fake texts from her phone telling friends and family that she was in Antigua and even forced her to send voice notes. At home, she had a 4-year-old son along with a mother who was battling cancer. She tried to escape once, but he caught her and punished her by showing a dug-up grave in the backyard. In the 3rd month, Moana finally saw a way out. One day, Veron went to cook in the kitchen and routinely brought her with him as he feared she'd escape if left alone. She sat on a chair as he used the stove. At some point, he went outside to wash a pot, and she took the opportunity to take action. She immediately wrote a note stating, "I'm here all the time, get help," and stuck it in a box with insulin in the fridge. This box was for Veron's great aunt, who was diabetic, and Moana knew that she had a caretaker who would visit the house. Eventually, the caretaker found the note and immediately phoned the police. When they arrived, Veron intimidated Moana into giving a false name, Kimberly, threatening her life if she refused. When the police questioned her at the door, she claimed her name was Kimberly while in Veron's presence. They then asked if she was sure, and she responded yes. The police eventually were headed to leave the property, and she feared for the aftermath of what would happen to her next. Fortunately, the caretaker intervened, informing the police that that lady is not named Kimberly, and she is indeed Moana. The police then turned around, apprehended Veron, and charged him with kidnapping. While investigating his home on Moana's kidnapping, they stumbled upon an interesting discovery that might have been linked to a more serious and ongoing investigation: a pair of Suzuki car keys. "33-year-old Sharleen Greaves was a bright and up-and-coming businesswoman. She owned a real estate agency named Bijou Real Estate and was a full-time realtor alongside her secretary, Ranella Bailey. On this night, Ranella left the office early to attend a funeral. After leaving the funeral, she headed to her mother-in-law's house and went to sleep. The next morning, she arrived to work at the office and noticed that the air conditioner was left on and Sharleen's office door was locked. She sought the help of a man who ended up climbing to peer over a partition into Sharleen's office. Immediately, he stumbled back upon what he saw: a dead body in a pool of blood. Police actually received a call at 11:30 p.m. the night prior from an unknown female who was speaking in a hushed voice, saying that someone had broken into her office. Soon she began screaming, and the line went dead. At the scene, there were no signs of a break-in other than a stab to the door. Crime scene investigators processed the ransacked office and bloody fingerprints on the walls. Sharleen was found with multiple stab wounds and was pronounced dead at the scene. However, her Suzuki Escudo vehicle was missing and would turn up hours later keyless in Wilson Hill. When interviewed about Sharleen's keys in his residence, Veron claimed that her secretary Ranella rented Sharleen's car to him whenever she left overseas, including that night she was murdered. He stated that he had plans of returning her car the next morning, but Ranella shared the news of Sharleen's discovery, which deterred him as he did not want to be associated. Ranella denied all of these accounts. In fact, another woman came forward with more information regarding Veron on the night of Sharleen's murder. Veron had been staying with the female relative whom he allegedly was having intimate relations with. Around 6:30 p.m., he left the home and told her that he was going hunting. He carried with him a backpack that usually held his knives. Around midnight, she saw him again in the yard carrying a knife. She conversed with him briefly on the porch and couldn't help but notice a strong and unforgettable foul blood smell. When her eyes wandered on the knife, she observed bloodstains at the brink of the handle where the metal was. After she got ready for bed and laid down, Veron took off his shoes and joined her. He strangely began crying, and she consoled him before they both fell asleep. That same week, she heard about a murder, but did not realize who the victim was until the following week. Upon seeing Sharleen's photo, she remembered Veron showing the same picture to her a week prior, commenting that it was his sexy friend. She later asked him about Sharleen being his friend, and this time, he denied ever being friends with her. 2 months later, he confessed to her that he was Sharleen's killer, and he had no idea as to why he did it. But at this point, she already knew that he had to be her killer. After his confession, the relative said she didn't know what else to do, but to continue the relationship until she knew what to do. However, when he was taken into custody in April 2016 for the kidnapping and rape of Moana, she felt compelled to report this to the police. Keeping this information in mind, police searched his home for Moana's case, and that is when they stumbled upon Sharleen's keys. In April of 2016, Veron was charged with Sharleen's murder the week after Moana's kidnapping charge. With both cases hitting news outlets, it quickly became a big buzz in the small island. 2 months later, on June 15th, Brooklyn's District Attorney Kenneth Thompson made an announcement that he will also be formally charged in Chanel's murder. Upon interviewing with the NYPD who flew to the island for Chanel's case, Moana disclosed to them that while captive, Veron gave her a 2006 New York Post article to read about Chanel missing and made other claims of killing a girl in the U.S. Though when asked about Chanel's disappearance, he told her he didn't kill her, but knew who did. The combined elements of the murder of Sharleen, kidnapping of Moana, along with the accounts that Chanel was supposed to see him the day she disappeared, made him all too suspicious. But now, police felt they had a much stronger case against him, considering his history, in order to bring Chanel's case to justice. In December of 2020, charges for Moana's kidnapping were dropped because she refused to testify. On December 16, 2022, Veron Primus was sentenced to 34 years in prison for the murder of Sharleen Greaves. Since he spent over 5 years in jail awaiting trial, he will serve the remaining 29 years. The NYPD Cold Case Squad flew to St. Vincent to build a case against Veron and Chanel's murder. Mary Murphy joined Crime Watch Daily to travel to St. Vincent herself and cover this case as well. Reverend Al Sharpton has been involved in the case from the very beginning and still hopes for Chanel's justice. Veron is still in prison serving his sentence. Since being incarcerated in 2016, he has escaped prison twice because he was dissatisfied that he was denied bail. However, he was apprehended both times. Sharleen's mother expressed confusion on why Veron ever did this to her daughter and is still deeply pained by the whole ordeal. Brooklyn's DA wishes for him to be extradited to the U.S., likely after he serves his time, so that he can stand trial for Chanel's murder. May Chanel and Sharleen rest easy in paradise, and may the only light Veron sees is when he's on his way to extradition. Thank you all for watching.